Package of Petroleum Industry Bill tops 9th Senate priority list. Central Bank of Nigeria unfolds new lending policy. AFCFTA, Nigeria's decision to sign good for the economy. Plus, Securities and Exchange Commission amends operating framework for transmission of shares. Details of these and more will come your way on this edition of Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Amina Nujain. Welcome. The Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry has applauded the decision of President Muhammadu Buhari to sign the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, describing the move as good for the Nigerian economy. The president of the chamber, Adetokunbo Kayode, said the organized private sector is in support of the agreement in view of its immense benefits to the Nigerian economy and its competitive market. He also explained that by signing the AFCFTA, the Nigerian economy is not in any way exposed to any economic or social hazards, since the pact had all the necessary safeguards against smuggling, dumping, and other risks. Meanwhile, in a bid to reduce the rising unclaimed dividends amounting to more than 70 billion naira, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has amended the draft on the operating framework for the transmission of shares from a deceased to the beneficiary. SEC, in an amended draft, said the Commission has reduced the timeline for the transmission of deceased shares from 3 weeks to 1 week to encourage beneficiaries of deceased investors to step up efforts to claim such dividends. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has taken further steps to ramp up growth in the Nigerian economy by directing commercial banks to maintain a minimum loan-to-deposit ratio of 60% effective from September 30, 2019. The central bank stated this in a letter addressed to all banks this week. The new minimum loan-to-deposit ratio would be subject to quarterly review. The minimum loan-to-deposit ratio was previously 80%. President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, has assured Nigerians and operators in the oil industry that the 9th Senate will conclude work on the Petroleum Industry Bill. He gave the assurance when he granted audience to the management of an oil company. Ignatius Unko has details.
The Petroleum Industry Bill, seen as key to the reforming of the oil industry in Nigeria, is one of the bills that has not been passed into law by the National Assembly.
Oil industry in Nigeria.
At this meeting, President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, sought the support of oil companies in reforming the sector. He also advised oil companies operating in the Niger Delta to improve on their corporate social responsibility.
So we have learned our lessons from the previous experiences, and going forward, we intend to start work on the Petroleum Industry Bill as quickly as possible. This time around, we would like to work very closely with the executive arm of government, those who will be implementing the bill, but we would also like to have you on board as early as possible.
Senator Lawan also met with the forum of former members of the House of Representatives, led by former Speaker Umar Gali Naaba, during which he assured them of all-inclusive and stable parliament.
I feel that all of us are safe, but where there is a very unjustifiable deal, then we will always be there to ensure that the right thing is done, that justice prevails, and I can tell you that this is what the Ninth Senate stands for.
The legislature, if anything, has the quality to unite this country.
The president of the Senate also granted audience to the Niger Delta Youth Forum, during which he also pledged legislative intervention in addressing challenges in the Niger Delta region.
Participating countries in the Declaration of Cooperation have signed a charter to further strengthen what many describe as a high-level voluntary commitment to stabilize global oil markets. The 6th OPEC and non-OPEC ministerial meeting in Vienna, Austria, committed to continue proactive dialogue as they keep a close eye on the markets to ensure stability. Energy correspondent Lydia Sampson has details.
The Declaration of Cooperation, experts say, constitutes an unprecedented milestone in the history of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. This is because for the first time ever in 2016, member countries of OPEC coordinated with 11 non-OPEC oil-producing countries in an effort to accelerate the stabilization of the global oil market through voluntary production adjustments. The endorsement of the Charter of Cooperation, various speakers says, underscores the core principles of transparency, equity and fairness which underpinned OPEC's interactions with its non-OPEC oil-producing partners. Manuel Salvador Fernandez, People's Minister of Petroleum Venezuela, and the Minister of Energy of the Russian Federation, Alexander Novak, reiterated member countries' resolve to sustain the market through secure supply to consumers.
Sus implicaciones en el mercado petrolero.
In view of the underlying large uncertainties and its potential implications on the global oil market, the 6th OPEC and non-OPEC ministerial meeting decided to extend the decision taken on voluntary production adjustments for 9 months.
At the same time, I would like to underscore the fact that each single nation of the 24-nation group has its own independent and extremely valuable opinion, and any decision taken cannot be taken without the acceptance of all countries. So each opinion is equal in value.
We were also conscious of the fact that this one variable of stocks of inventory was the culprit. And to be able to return this equation to balance, it was beyond OPEC. So we needed to go outside of OPEC to reach out to other producers, to persuade them and convince them with the data to come on board and work with us. And this we were able to achieve. And we have these 24 countries now and probably growing. And these countries have agreed yesterday and today, ratified today, to have a charter of cooperation that would institutionalize this partnership into a Catholic marriage, if you like.
The 6th OPEC and non-OPEC ministerial meeting is resolved to build on success achieved with the Declaration of Cooperation, now more permanent as a charter.
To further discuss the economic implications and benefit of decision taken by the Organization of Petroleum Countries, OPEC, to extend production cuts until March 2020 during the 6th OPEC and non-OPEC ministerial meeting is an oil and gas expert, Jude Tabai. Welcome to Business Express.
Thank you.
Now, with all the intrigues playing out, when it comes to stabilizing price and the charter that was just signed, what should the responsibility of Nigeria be?
Well, first and foremost, as a nation, protecting what we have and making sure we increase more on production is number one. You know, I think we need to commend those who have done it possible to make sure that this OPEC cut is retained. Because if that's not done and production is cut, that brings more money to the nation. But with the way it was going before, it was not followed up with intensive support from the various OPEC nations.
Let me come in here. So which way should it have gone?
No, definitely the way it is now. It's better now the way it is. Because the way it is now, that means there's more funds for OPEC nations. If not for this production cut that has increased, that has at least stabilized the price of crude oil, then, you know, as a nation that is solely dependent on oil, it has been disastrous. We as a people, we as a country, we have a right to protect, stabilize the Niger Delta region and everything that has to do with oil facilities to make sure they are properly guided. The government, as a government, have to make sure that all indices that are in place to make sure things are properly secured to maintain this stability is paramount to Nigeria and other nations.
Jude Tabai, an oil and gas expert, thank you for sparing time to join us on Business Express today.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, is set to introduce the incorporated joint venture model to replace all the joint venture exploration and production projects. The group managing director of the NNPC, Dr. Mekanti Baru, at the Nigeria Oil and Gas Conference disclosed that the move is part of efforts to surmount cash coal challenges and put upstream sector on a path of sustainable growth.
With the significance of it, it opens a whole vista of things for us as the industry. Because we came in a time when there was mutual suspicion, depressed mood, uncomfortable behaviors, and almost anything goes. And money is about the most difficult thing to go in between you and your partners.
Meanwhile, contrary to claims by the petroleum marketers that they had no access to foreign exchange for imports, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, says the Central Bank of Nigeria provided about $3.6 billion foreign exchange to oil marketers to import petroleum products into the country. The chief operating officer downstream of the NNPC, Henry Inkem Obu, said the claims by the marketers that their inability to import petroleum products was due to problems related to access to foreign exchange was not true, while noting that Forex intervention scheme, which was rolled out by CBN and co-managed by the NNPC, has been extremely successful. Henry added that since the scheme was set up, NNPC has received applications from marketers for $7.2 billion worth of foreign exchange. Now, let's take a look to the foreign exchange market. News just reaching us indicates that President Muhammadu Buhari will Saturday depart Abuja for Niamey, Niger, to attend the Africa Union Summit scheduled to hold July 7th. A statement by Femi Adesina, Special Advisor to the President on the Media and Publicity, says the President will be participating in the 12th extraordinary session of the Assembly in Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and the first mid-year coordination meeting of the AU and the regional economic communities. The President will sign the AfCFTA agreement. Now to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The NSE share index declined at the end of trade. It depreciated by 0.10% to close at 29,270.95 basis points, with market capitalization at 12.9 trillion naira. A total of 298.4 million equities exchanged hands in 3,377 deals worth 1.8 billion naira. At the end of the day, the banking sector led the decliners. Corn oil topped the gainers, while WAPCO was the most sought after. Gold prices edged higher on Friday and were on track for a 7th consecutive weekly gains as investors awaited U.S. employment data that could influence expectations about aggressive policy easing by the Federal Reserves. Ahead of the 25th Nigeria Economic Summit, the Ministry of Budget and National Planning has inaugurated a joint planning committee to facilitate the smooth staging of the summit. Olayinka Ojo reports.
The United Nations recently projected that Nigeria will double by 2050 to 410 million, making Nigeria the third most populous nation in the world. This has far-reaching implications on economic growth and development. The question now is, what kind of Nigeria would you like to see by the year 2050?
Nigeria that will be technology-driven, that will cater for the population ahead of us.
Because that is what most of the countries are using right now. They're using technology to make their country a better place.
In Nigeria, that everything would have been conquered. Housing would have been conquered, hunger would have been conquered, and even job would have been conquered as well.
With the issues of maximizing the demographic dividend for the growth and development of the country, as well as mobilizing and attracting needed investment and the development and deployment of human capital to achieve higher productivity key, these experts believe it is imperative to look at the future and stimulate long-term economic plan for the country, since the lifespan of the economic recovery and growth plan will end next year.
The engagement should be sustained, particularly given the enormous contribution it has made in shaping policy direction of government.
Only a competitive private sector economy can achieve a rising standard of living.
Being the largest economic summit in the country, the annual Nigerian Economic Summit, which started in 1993, is the premier public-private platform for dialogue between the federal government and the private sector. It is the hope of the likes of Sonia, Brown, and Neka that the journey of the kind of Nigeria they want to see by the year 2050 begins from now.
European stocks trade slightly lower as investors await U.S. job data. Bosede Abel has details.
Global market focus have adjusted to U.S. non-farm payrolls and unemployment data expected on Friday. A Reuters poll indicates that the non-farm payrolls are expected to have risen by 160,000 in June compared to 75,000 in May. A weaker than expected figure could increase bets that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates at its meeting on July 30 and 31. Trading for 5th July, the U.S. stock index futures pointed to slightly mixed open as investors focus on the release of key job data. Futures on the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite traded in opposite directions. European stocks traded lower as investors await the release of key U.S. non-farm payroll reports, which may provide an indication as to whether the Federal Reserve is likely to cut interest rates at July's monetary policy meeting. Meanwhile, in Asia, stocks were lower ahead of the release of the U.S. non-farm payroll reports. Shanghai Composite up 0.19%, Nikkei added 0.2%, and the Hang Seng Index was 0.1% lower as of its final hour of trading, while African stocks were mostly negative.
And that's it on Business Express for this week. You can access all previous episodes on YouTube, and you can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now. Don't forget the hashtag BizX. We value your feedback, so keep them coming. Until we come your way again Monday, I am Amina Nujaim. Have a lovely weekend.